The staircase was dimly lit with torch sconces. It curved around at an unsettlingly sharp angle and got tighter as they went along. The once muffled cries were creeping up the stairs towards them, and they could hear Sister Ryker struggle to fetter down her own tears from behind. Dusty stole a glance at Sister Caverness, her smile just as wild as always. In the low light it looked almost hungry, her eyes set forward in their sockets like a predator. Their feet finally found landing, and a hallway sprang into existence beyond the staircase's ever-shortening ceiling. It was cold stone, damp to the touch, and the air smelled like it hadn't moved in a century.
"Now,"
Sister Caverness began,
"what sort of business were you getting into with these boys, sister?" "I was just seeing them out of the school hall. That's all, I promise."
Sister Ryker spoke with a sharp lump in her throat. Her eyes were drowning. They burned with reflected torchlight.
"It looked to me like you were escaping into the night. Why, if I hadn't been at the door when you got to it, you might have them halfway into the forest by now. Think of the horrors I may have just saved them from. Shame be upon you, Sister Ryker."
Caverness hissed through her demented smile with all the relaxed intensity of a house cat batting around a ground squirrel.
"I think you know where we are headed, sister. Why don't you lead the way?"
The bespectacled woman continued.
"And boys, I want you to stay close at hand. We don't want this traitorous serpent leading you astray."
Dusty kept his eyes on his brother. Topher held his head low but kept his upper lip stiff and brow furrowed angrily, a face he'd been known to make when he knew he was in trouble. He walked forward with an even pace, ready to accept whatever consequence Sister Caverness had cooked up for them. They finally rounded a corner into a corridor with several rooms. Sister Ryker looked back at them with genuine sorrow and pushed open a heavy black door. Its ebony panels were intricately carved, depicting the scene of some unknown battle. Their torchlight made the figures flit about as if in motion. The smell of this room was much worse than before. Death settled here. Excrement stained the walls in a deranged pattern that made the boys sick in a way they didn't understand. There were piles of bones, some displayed on tables while others lay strewn about the floor.
"Sister Ryker, where are we? I don't like it here. I promise we won't run away again. Please, just let us go home."
Dusty pleaded nervously, the stench burning his lungs. Caverness smiled down from above.
"Don't you worry, child. Ophelia is with us tonight. Can't you feel her?"
Topher grabbed his brother's hand.
"Ophelia will watch over us, Dusty. Don't worry."
He was sobbing through the words.
"Punishment creates mindfulness, just like the sisters say." "That's a good boy,"
Sister Caverness whispered. She savored the words for a while before continuing.
"I don't know what this snake told you boys, but leaving is not the answer. For just as Ophelia's own children were struck down, so too would you perish."
She pursed her lips smugly as they continued through a tattered cloth that served as a doorway into a final chamber. When she entered, she lowered her head and removed her large hat.
"Madams of the woods, I have come before you with not only the duplicitous harlot that abandoned the ritual, but also 2 young ones that she tried to take with her. What would you have me do with them?"
Sister Ryker was visibly shaking. She tried to speak, but the words died on her lips. The creature that turned from the far end of the table was not human. It vaguely resembled an old and disfigured woman, but its oily black hair and exaggerated features betrayed its true nature. A ragged, crooked finger pointed towards Dusty.
"How old is this one, pet?"
It glared at Dusty while the words slithered across the desecrated stonework. Sister Caverness slapped Dusty across the face. "Speak when you're spoken to, mongrel!" She pushed him hard into the chamber, and the greasy creature shambled forwards, joints creaking and bending in impossible angles. He winced at the sight, through a torrent of his own tears. 13, but I'll be 14 in the spring. He wanted to turn back to Caverness for protection. The woman had presided over him since he was an infant, but he saw her now truly for the first time. He knew she would not protect him.
And this one?
A second, but just as disturbing creature stepped out from behind the first. Its eyes locked onto Topher.
I'm 10, ma'am.
He stammered out, unsure of how to address the sickening being that called to him.
Both promising numbers,
a third beast exclaimed from behind the group. They reeled around to find it licking Sister Ryker's shoulder, her neck now broken in its clutches.
This one is too clean. We should bury it for now.
The boys screamed and fell backwards into a stream of unknown bile. Sister Caverness picked them both up by their collars.
Have some respect for the recently deceased children. Miss Ryker chose to die when she fled this place. May she be a reminder to you both.
Dusty heard the cries again, coming from a table behind the hags. They turned to face it, and Dusty's gut turned. He could see little Freddie Ryker on the table, his chest cut open with his heart visible, and it was beating, but turning black.
Damned pop,
one of the creatures bellowed.
Foolish sister, get out of the way.
One of the hags pushed its way to the stable.
Sumac will kill this one unless you use the stab horn.
It began shoving bone tools and branches inside the child.
No!
Dusty didn't even notice the movement. He jerked his head at the sound and saw Topher yelling wild-eyed at the hags. He looked back to the beast just in time to see the skipping rock Topher had thrown, hitting one square in the back of the head.
You little demon!
Caverness screamed and grabbed him up by his arm, but the hags moved deceptively fast. They were in his face before the sister could react.
Oh, yes, this one is spicy. We bet we can keep it for breakfast.
But Freddy's wails grew sharply without the creature's magic tending to him.
Quickly, sister.
The beast turned and yelled back towards the table.
Steady its thumper before it rots.
One of the creatures grabbed Freddy's heart with its clawed hands. A black energy began to encompass it, but it only turned to sludge.
Oh, no! You thick-headed cur, now we can't even eat it!
The creature relaxed its grip on Topher.
Here, take this one,
and threw the younger brother through the air like a ball of parchment.
We will take this one.
It picked up Dusty with one hand, its claws reaching all the way around his midsection. He could hear them clacking into each other behind his back.
We will make hexes of them both.
The hag reached out a finger and touched Dusty on the forehead. His body was instantly paralyzed and his mind soon drifted into darkness.